All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, life is all about finding your niche. A lot of brothers out here, well, I shouldn't call them brothers, a lot of so-called black males out here, they become big haters because they're not spending enough time in their life investing in themselves and figuring out what their niche is in this world. What do they do well? What do they enjoy doing? And how can they monetize it? Instead, they prefer to concentrate on what other people are doing, and they become obsessed with other people's lives, which is only going to lead you into one direction. You become a hater. Now, when you spend time figuring out what you do well, what you enjoy, and how you can help yourself and those around you, that's when you become the greatest version of yourself. That's when you optimize yourself. Now, when it comes to Draymond Green, he's made waves over the course of the last couple of days by declaring that he considers himself the greatest defender in the history of the NBA. I have news for you, brothers. This is nothing new from him. He said the same thing a couple of years ago when the Warriors were in the finals against the Toronto Raptors. I guess people forgot about that because he did say it a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago, and Scottie Pippen responded to it. Kendrick Perkins, Tracy McGrady all responded to it. So this is something that the brother really believes. Now, why he's saying it out in the open like this, who knows? Could it be because he's a clutch sport athlete and that seems to be their modus operandi to market their assets, to have them say things that are filled with bombast and boast, to get people talking about them? Who knows? Either way, I have no problem with Draymond Green believing it. I don't even care that he says it, especially in light of the fact that he conveys why he believes that it's so integral for him to say these things, because it's a form of self-affirmation. It's very similar to what young Cassius Clay used to say about himself, that he's the greatest boxer of all time. He was saying that even before he won the heavyweight championship. So I can't dispute Draymond Green's level of belief in himself. I'd rather have a brother believe in himself and seek out his goals than be so concerned about what somebody else is doing, becoming a hater, and maybe having it result in the loss of life of himself or someone else. I view Draymond Green's form of self-talk as productive, not destructive. So many people destroy themselves through their self-talk. They tell themselves what they can't do. Draymond figured out early when he joined the Golden State Warriors that his niche was going to be he would coordinate and orchestrate the offense, and he would also orchestrate and coordinate the defense. And for him to do so, he would have to consider himself the best player in the NBA on the defensive side, because he knew that that's where his impact will come. He can't shoot like Clay or Steph. He can't dominate offensively like KD. So where he was going to shine is on the offensive end as an orchestrator, and on the defensive end as a great one-on-one defender and also a superlative team help defender. Now, do I believe that he's the greatest defensive player ever? No, I don't. But he has the right to believe that he is. I've already stated, and it's on record, the greatest defensive player of all time, and it's not particularly disputable, is Bill Russell. If you look up his defensive win shares, like there's a huge gap between himself and the next player. Bill Russell is easily the most impactful and the greatest defensive player of all time. Now, the best defenders that I've seen with my own eyes, of course, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Gary Payton, Ben Wallace, Dwight Howard, Dikembe Mutombo, David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Bruce Bowen, Dennis Rodman. Those names I just rattled off the top of my head as the best defenders that I can think of offhand that I've ever seen. But do I have a problem with Draymond Green? Let me also add Kawhi Leonard and also Draymond Green in that list as well. So do I have a problem with Draymond Green saying that he thinks that he's the best of all time? No, he can say that. I don't believe it. But he can say that if he wants to, because he's done enough, he's accomplished enough to be able to say that.
The Warriors are currently in ninth place in a loaded Western Conference, but that's not stopping Draymond Green from being confident as ever. This past weekend, Draymond raised eyebrows when he talked about where he ranks as a defender all time. Take a listen here for yourself.
I think I'm the best defender that ever played this game. 100%. That's my opinion. I also think I view the game a lot differently than most people view the game. You know, when I look at all of the facets that make up the defensive side of the ball, I think I am great in every facet that makes up that side of the ball.
Draymond Green overall is such a conundrum because he is a defensive savant, but he's also an idiot savant. He's just as likely to say something stupid and tremendously dumb as he is to make a game-saving play on defense. So you have to put up with a lot of his shenanigans.
I think I'm the best defender to ever play in the NBA. I stand by that. I'll put myself up against anyone.
Well, you gotta love the confidence. Shannon, does Draymond have a case?
Yeah, and he should be thrown in jail. They should put a case. They should have put a case on his butt for saying that out loud. Skip, Draymond Green is not a top 20 defender.
Right, but how do you evaluate that, Shannon Sharp? How could you sit there and say that as a football player? You'd have to grasp the nuance of what he does, the impact of what he does out there on the basketball floor. And I'm going to hit you with something. If you can be considered a top 20 all-time defender in the history of the NBA, then you have the right to throw your name into that hat. Did you have that same energy when LeBron James stated that he was the greatest basketball player ever after he just won his 3rd championship? And he was giving himself all these brownie points and grading his career on a curve because they came back from down 3-1 against a 73-win team? Did you have that energy when LeBron did that?
All time.
Yeah.
And Skip, and the guy that I got in front of Draymond, I didn't put Mr. Russell, Bill Russell. I didn't put Havlicek. I didn't put Clyde Frazier because I didn't see them play.
You didn't put Bill Russell?
I didn't put it because I didn't see
them. You got to just do it on reputation.
Absolutely. All you have to do is look up his numbers. You don't even have to have seen him play. Bill Russell's defensive win shares and his defensive ratings are off the fucking charts.
Skip, is he better than Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Dwight Howard, Dikembe Mutombo, Tim Duncan, and Ben Wallace?
No.
Well, it depends on what you're asking. Of those players that you named, the only other player who was asked to do all the things that Draymond was asked to do on defense was Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem Olajuwon could guard 1 through 5. Now, when he was in his overall prime as a player in the early to mid-90s, he could not just get out there and guard a point guard, but he could for a short stretch if need be. A lot of brothers might remember in Game 6 of the 1994 Finals against the Knicks, Hakeem was able to go out there and block John Starks' attempt at a game-winning 3 to win the game because he was so mobile. Hakeem had the greatest feet of any big man in the history of the NBA. But of those other guys that were named, David Robinson and Dikembe Mutombo, their role was a bit different. Now, David Robinson was a superlative athlete, but he was a bit stiff. He wasn't as great moving from side to side as Draymond is. So we have to assess what their roles are. Now, Ben Wallace is one of the great help defenders in the history of the NBA. Great shot blocker, phenomenal rebounder. He really was the early 2000s version of Dennis Rodman. I would have loved to have seen a prime Dennis Rodman go up against a prime Ben Wallace. That would have been something to see. Kevin Garnett also deserves honorable mention.
Okay, well, let's go forwards. Dennis Rodman, Kawhi Leonard, Scottie Pippen.
Kawhi Leonard also deserves honorable mention.
Garnett, Bobby Jones. He better than any of those.
I can't believe you put Bobby Jones in there.
I remember Bobby Jones.
All right.
Okay, let's go guards. Is he better than Michael Jordan, Gary Payton, Kobe Bryant, Sidney Moncrief, Michael Cooper, Bruce Bowen, Alvin Robertson, or Tony Allen?
Well, here's my thing. Because Shannon's just trying to name a whole bunch of players, and he's doing it to try to attack Draymond. If LeBron James has said the same thing, Shannon Sharp will be trying to make the case that, at the very least, LeBron James is a better defender than people give him credit for. He'll say something like, well, LeBron should have won the Defensive Player of the Year award in 2013, and he was robbed of that. Once you win multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards, you have the right to say that I'm the best defensive player of all time if you want to say that. Now, I believe that Draymond has only won one Defensive Player of the Year in that mid to late 2010s era where Kawhi Leonard and Rudy Gobert were winning Defensive Players of the Year. But at the very least, he can throw his name in there because he's been so excellent, particularly for a certain period of time, that if he wants to call himself that, especially if he knows that that's his niche and that's how he's going to build up his brand, he can go ahead and do so. I don't have a problem with that. But for Shannon to be here naming all these names, a lot of the guys he named didn't even win Defensive Player of the Year. Kobe Bryant never won Defensive Player of the Year. His best defensive seasons were in the early 2000s, around 2000, 2001, when they were winning championships with Shaq, and in the late 2000s, around 09, 2010, when they won the championship a couple of times again. Phil Jackson is on record as saying that Kobe Bryant was an overrated defender. Nothing against him, but he gets a lot of credit almost like by osmosis for what Jordan was on defense back in the 80s and 90s. Now, Michael Jordan, to me, if we're going to, do a qualification for defensive greatness based on the amount of energy that you also expend on offense, he's probably the greatest defensive player ever. Because Draymond Green is more of a specialist. And as we can see with Kawhi Leonard, when you exert more energy on offense, that leaves less for defense. For a player to average 35 points a game and shoot almost 54% from the field, and also lead the league in steals and have over 100 blocks, like Michael Jordan did, and I think that year he finished like second or third in defensive win shares, that might be the greatest defensive season of all time when you also take into account what he brought offensively. Hakeem Olajuwon as well. I mean, this guy was out there getting 26, 27 points per game, 14 rebounds, and also leading the league in blocks, and he had a 200 steal, 100 block season. Hakeem Olajuwon did at center. So that's how great he was. But I'm not going to listen to Shannon Sharpe just naming a bunch of names of guys just so that he can drop Draymond down lower.
Which one of those guys, Draymond Green, is better than? That's 19 guys.
You got 19 there?
That's 19.
Okay.
And I left off Mr. Russell. I left off Havlicek. I left off Clyde Frazier. And he says he's the greatest all time? Man, Draymond on Flocka. He ain't even smoking that good stuff out.
Come on now, Shannon. You know deep down in your heart you feel like you're the best tight end ever. You're not going to say it on TV. But you know you believe that. So what's wrong? If the brother wants to say he's the greatest defender ever, he can say that. It's okay. LeBron said he's the greatest basketball player ever. And this was a couple of years ago. And nobody really got on him, at least when it comes to his fan base.
Oh, Flocka, he crazy.
Skip that nigga, just wow. Now he said Braun, I said, okay, now we're talking. Now we're cooking with grease.
I think is going on with Draymond. It's the same thing that infected Steve Kerr the other night. It's spoiled rotten syndrome, where you dominated for so long as a franchise. You were such a dynasty that all of a sudden, when you fell back to earth and there's no more KD, and for now there's no Clay,
right,
and you're just another pretty good team,
yes,
and Draymond's just another pretty good player,
right,
you can't stand it anymore. Your pride is rubbed raw. Don't you remember me? Remember what I was?
Right.
Remember that series in 2016 when I got suspended? Everybody said I was the glue of the team, and they
right,
missed me so dearly in Game 5 back in Oracle.
Right.
Okay? They did miss him.
Yes.
But does that make him top 20 all time? No. To your point, I think I can go to 25 pretty easily.
Well, see, you probably saw. I know you saw John Havlicek and Clyde Frazier play. I didn't, but they were better than he was.
Let Skip speak. Goddamn.
I've seen a lot of Draymond Green, and there was a reason that he was the 5th pick in the second round, not in the first round,
right,
but in the second round. He's not an explosive athlete. He is highly skilled, and I think what he was trying to say in the clip we just saw, he does it with his mind even more than he does his body, because he tries to be in the right place at the right time.
Well, that's what truly great defensive players do. I mean, that's what it means to have a high basketball IQ. You make up maybe for the lack of athleticism by having foresight. We saw that with Larry Bird when he made that steal against Isaiah Thomas in the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, that's what players with high basketball IQ are able to do. Beat you to the spot because they can see where you're going.
I give him high marks for that. But as far as dominating a game defensively, again, you're not even in the same breath. Let's just start with this fact. He has won one Defensive Player of the Year. Just one. Okay, let's start with the fact that Dikembe and Ben Wallace won 4.
Right.
So right there, you put Dikembe in?
I put Dikembe in, yeah.
Okay, so that's...
Here's my thing. Well, we're going to start to have discussions about the best defensive players ever. You have to separate the centers. And I'm trying to remember who else I also heard say that, but that's very pertinent. You have to separate the centers from the wings defensively, because very few centers are able to guard anything other than the paint or their position. Dikembe Mutombo was a player who guarded the paint and he guarded his position. That's totally separate from the best defensive centers ever, like a Bill Russell, like a Hakeem Olajuwon, who could actually move their feet from side to side and travel outside of the paint. David Robinson could do that as well. Patrick Ewing, to a degree, could do that. Now, when you're talking about wing defenders, players like Kawhi Leonard, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, they have to be evaluated differently as well. Then you have on-ball defenders like Gary Payton. So there are different criteria where each player is going to be measured, you know. Alvin Robertson, Michael Cooper, Sidney Moncrief. So, I mean, if we're going to have the conversation, we have to approach it in an educated fashion.
So, no. Dwight Howard, all-time great, won 3 of these awards.
Absolutely. Dwight Howard was a monster on defense. He was a monster, period.
Thank you.
Okay?
There was a stretch in the late 2000s into the early 2010s where there were many people who thought that Dwight Howard might be the best player in the NBA. Very rarely was he ranked lower than 3rd in the whole league in that stretch from around 2008 to around 2012.
Now let's go to 2-time winners. We got Hakeem that you put in. Did you put Kawhi in?
I put Kawhi in.
Thank you. Alonzo Mourning won 2 of these.
That's a great name also. Forgot about him.
I forgot Mourning.
He won 2. Rudy Gobert has won 2. Sidney Moncrief won 2.
Yeah, I put him in there.
2.
Yes, with Milwaukee, I remember Sidney Moncrief.
Mark Eaton won 2 Defensive Players of the Year.
I didn't put him in there.
And Mark Eaton's like 7'4".
He was, yes.
So it...
Right, but I mean, he had no foot movement whatsoever. He dominated the paint. He was just a guy who blocked a lot of shots. But once again, you can't compare defensive positions like that. Draymond Green is going to counter by saying, when you look at the multitude of things that I'm asked to do, you can't compare me to Mark Eaton. And he'd be right.
It's hard to argue with 7'4" because he just dominated. He just blocked everything you wanted to throw up in the lane. Okay, now we go back to your list. And let's start with the guy who took first exception, who was Tony Allen. I just want people to remember, Kobe Bryant always said, my toughest defender was Tony Allen.
That's good enough for me.
That's all you need. Case closed. Next question.
Right.
I know Tony Allen. I used to watch him very closely. All he cared about was playing defense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, again, that's why you have to separate this into criteria, because Tony Allen was a defensive specialist, a lot like a Bruce Bowen. So you can't compare those defensive players to players who were two-way players like a Gary Payton or Michael Jordan or Scottie Pippen. Because what those players did, the two-way players, what they did on defense was even more special, because they were expected to produce on offense, especially Michael Jordan.
Offense was just an afterthought.
Right.
And he wasn't very good at offense, but he was all-time great at getting up in you. Mm-hmm. And another player that was right out of the same mold, or maybe he made the mold, was Michael Cooper for the Lakers.
Yes.
Listen, he's way beyond Draymond as a perimeter defender. Well, they tell the legendary stories about when they brought in Kobe when he was a 17-year-old to work him out. Jerry West took him to the YMCA in Inglewood for a little private workout, and Michael Cooper had just retired, and he brought Michael in just to torment and terrorize this kid. And you know what happened?
Right.
It went the other way.
Yes, by all accounts, Kobe being Bryant embarrassed Michael Cooper that day. And that was one of the indications that they had something special.
So Michael Cooper said, I can't take it anymore. Well, that's how much Jerry West thought of Michael Cooper. Okay? So then Bill Russell, listen, what he did to Wilt Chamberlain, we know the Wilt numbers, right? They're ridiculous numbers. Mm-hmm. They're so off the charts that you can't even fathom that he could average that many points and that many rebounds, right? Bill Russell terrorized him when they met head-to-head. Just terrorized him, owned him psychologically and physically.
You listen to the guy that tormented your Bulls. Is he better than Dennis Rodman?
No, and by the way, I left him out. He won 2 Defensive Players of the Year. Okay, now back to the Bulls.
Dennis Rodman in his prime would always get the opposing team's best offensive player. Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, James Worthy, Magic Johnson. Those were Dennis Rodman's assignments. Draymond Green is never going to get those top assignments. That's why I state he has the right to say what he wants to say, but he's a great team defender. To the point that I heard someone make earlier this morning, I think, who was it? I think it was Antoine Walker. He was the guy who was making some of these relevant points about the Draymond Green discussion. Draymond was not ever assigned onto LeBron James, or very rarely was he. It was Andre Iguodala.
1998. I definitely give you Scottie Pippen as all-time great, top 20. But listen, Michael Jordan, top 20. He's in my top 10.
Absolutely. Probably higher than that. Probably higher than that when you consider what he was expected to bring on offense.
I don't know if people understand how he just annihilated guards on defense, where he just took people out of the game. where you couldn't get the ball across half court against Jordan or Pippen.
For a guy to play to be that involved defensively and give you 30 on a nightly basis.
Thank you, Shannon. Every once in a while, you actually make a good point about Michael Jordan in basketball. Thank you, sir. That's the best thing that you've said thus far in this segment.
You don't see that, Skip. Normally, guys that are really good defensively, they're challenged offensively.
All right.
And that's what Jordan could give you. Skip, Gary Payton. Is Draymond better than Gary Payton?
No.
Two different types of defenders. Gary Payton is an on-ball hawk. Draymond Green is expected to be a jack of all trades. It's totally different. You cannot evaluate them according to the same standards.
He was called the glove for a reason.
What's Draymond's nickname?
Well, you know, Michael Jordan called Gary Payton the mitten.
I don't know. Draymond.
But Tombo had the fake away.
He's still doing that for Geico. They're still showing the Geico.
They banned this. Skip, you can't do that in the guy's face now.
Okay,
you didn't mention Tim Duncan. You mentioned Kevin Garnett.
Okay, well,
Tim Duncan also definitely deserves to be mentioned up there as amongst the greatest defenders of all time. No doubt about it.
I was about to get to my Spurs because David Robinson and Tim Duncan way more valuable on defense than Draymond, who's about 6. What do we give him? 7, maybe?
Yeah.
6,
On a good day, he's around 6'6.5".
6'7". I don't know.
Skip, I get confidence, but this is delusion.
Okay. Did you put Kevin Garnett on?
Yeah, I got Kevin. I got KG. I got the ticket.
Wanted to make sure, and then I'm making sure we didn't lose anybody here. You put Kobe in there, right?
I put Kobe in there. Yes.
Okay.
Here's my thing. Kobe never won a Defensive Player of the Year award, but I'll give him honorable mention because of some of his defensive ratings during the Lakers' 2 championship runs. So I'll give him credit for that, but, you know, I can't put him above Draymond.
I put LeBron James above Draymond. Listen,
Come on now, Skip. Now, LeBron has some great years defensively, particularly with the Miami Heat. His first 3 years with the Heat were probably the best defensive years that he's ever had. But a lot of the times he was placed on these defensive, lists for first team all defense out of reputation. That's a part of brand building. It's the same thing with Kobe. Kobe was placed on a lot of all defensive teams because they were trying to brand him as the next Jordan. I'll give LeBron credit. He's been serviceable anywhere to great over the course of his career on defense. But to be mentioned as the best defender ever, that's a joke.
LeBron's now in year 18, but when he was in those first 10 years,
I purposely left him out because I didn't want people to say you just put Draymond.
No, I'll put him in. I'll put him in because he was first team all defense.
What about Bruce Bowen?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a gadget guy who could do. He
was a specialist. But if you're going to mention him as a specialist, then I have a hard time with people saying that Tony Allen should be in there because he was a specialist. I think that specialists like, those guys, Michael Cooper, they should be left out because that's all they do. Now, Draymond Green, he's a specialist on defense as well, but he also is an orchestrator on offense.
He was play defense. You talk about
I know Bruce very well, and he was a little bit of a gray area defender.
He was dirty.
Oh, no, he was dirty. There was no gray area there with Bruce Bowen. He was dirty.
He had to get in your head as well as up in you, right? I don't know. That's a close call for me.
I'm taking Alvin Robertson over him.
Yeah, he was special.
Alvin Robertson was just mean. The only guy that he didn't really try to be mean to was Jordan, and that's because they knew each other from the '84 Olympics.
But people don't remember.
I only went with guys that I saw play. I didn't see Havlicek play. I didn't see Mr. Russell play, and I didn't see Clyde Frazier. These guys that I saw play. I've seen Draymond play. Draymond Green is not a top 20 defender.
All right.
I don't care what he says. It's his opinion.
I'll throw one more name in there.
He has the right to say what he wants to say, though, Shannon. Come on.
We have occasionally on the show, and I hope to have him on sometime in the very near future, and that is Ron Artest.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure what.
Oh, Ron Artest was a beast on defense. That's a good name there, Skip. Forgot about him. That's a good name. I'm not quite sure if I would put him up there with Draymond, but that was a great name. They're about on the same level.
He's going by right now.
Skip, I forgot about him, Skip. I didn't put him on there.
Hey, in his day, in his time, he was so physical and just nasty on defense.
Yes.
Because he's such a huge human being.
Yes.
He's so athletic and explosive.
Yeah, he was like a bowling ball on defense.
That he was even better on defense than he was on offense. And there was that one year in Indiana when I thought he was making a run at MVP,
Yeah.
and he was doing it on both ends of the floor, better than Draymond. Well, now what? I've lost track. I'm up to at least 25.
Yeah,
And you're saying you're best?
No, he said he's the greatest all time.
That's what I'm saying.
Didn't say, he could have said, you know what, I believe I'm a top 10 or I'm a top 20 defender all time, and then we could have a case where like, okay, let's see where you are. But to say you're the greatest all time and you're not better, I defy you to find one person that's in the NBA, any of the general managers. Let's go ask Jerry West, because Jerry West will remember all of them, and ask him if Draymond Green a better defender than anybody that we have on my list or your list. He gonna say absolutely not.
Don't do that, Shannon Sharp. Don't speak for Jerry West. Jerry West is going to say Draymond's name belongs in there amongst all those guys. Because at the end of the day, it's very difficult to distinguish who's that much better than anyone else on that list, especially when you have to factor in what your role is on defense. That's why I say you can't compare Draymond Green to Mark Eden or Dikembe Mutombo, guys whose job it was to just man the lane, block whatever shots came down there, and also try to guard their position. It's two totally different roles that Draymond Green has apart from those type of centers. Now, if you want to compare him to like an Olajuwon or David Robinson, then have at it. He's gonna fall short when it comes to Olajuwon. That's for damn sure. But what Draymond brings is a sense of self-sacrifice. So I understand why he's saying what he's saying.
You're not better than
He's not better than
have mercy. He's not even. Is he a better defender right now than Rudy Gobert? No.
That's laughable. You just made me LOL.
Hey, yo, why they clowning Draymond so much for? Hey, yo, Draymond might have to shoot some shots back on social media because they're getting too disrespectful here.
I'm better than Rudy Gobert.
And what exactly does Draymond do? Do you ever see him say...
Yeah, hey, yo, they letting loose on Draymond. What does he do? He just stands there and kicks people in the nuts.
I got him. I'm going to take him out of the game.
I get Skip. He can steal the ball. But Draymond ain't guarding no 1 through 5.
No.
He plays free safety for the most part. But no, he's not going to guard 1 through 5. If need be, they'll put him on a 3 or on a 2, and he'll do his best. But again, when their team was in their prime in the mid-2010s, he was not given the toughest defensive assignment. As a matter of oftentimes, he was not even given the second toughest assignment because you put Iguodala on LeBron James and you have Klay Thompson guarding Kyrie Irving. So really, like, Draymond's job was to play the free safety. He would guard a Tristan Thompson or a Kevin Love maybe, who they knew was mentally weak even during that time period from before he acknowledged his mental issues, his psychological issues. And Draymond's job would be to talk trash to Kevin Love to keep him out of his game and just, scan the entire court and make sure that he could help who needed to be helped, especially if players tried to drive the lane on the team, particularly if Steph Curry were to get beat by his man.
Dominate like Olajuwon. Olajuwon never averaged less than 2 blocks. He averaged 3 for a career. Robinson averaged 3 blocks for a career. Olajuwon averaged almost 2 steals for.
That's the thing. Olajuwon was just incredible, man. Like, people. If Olajuwon played today, he'd be one of those guys like Jokic averaging a 27-point triple-double. The only difference is that he'd also probably be averaging, 3-4 blocks a game like a Giannis or Joel Embiid and, 2.5 steals a game. Like, he was, especially with the floor being so open and how mobile he was with his feet. Now, he could guard 5 positions.
For a career. The man had a quadruple double. The NBA took it back. He went and got another one 2 days later.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. True story.
Come on, Draymond. I get you have confidence. Well, you know what, Skip? I don't care what anybody say. I'm the richest man in the world.
Right, but that's factually inaccurate. At least Draymond can say that, based on assessment, there could be a metric where I come out as the best, defender in the history of the NBA. He can claim that anyway. There's no metric where Shannon Sharp can claim to be the richest man in the world, unless you add together his fortune with his Boothang LeBron.
Nobody tell me otherwise.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Well, you can live in your own delusions.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
Come on, Draymond.
That's my feeling, Skip. That I'm the richest man in the world. Only thing that mess up my day is having to see your old ugly ass.
It's like, you know what? I feel I'm still a top defender. in all the NBA. I feel I'm one of the best defenders of all time. We can debate that one of the best. Okay, he does have a defensive player of the year. But Skip, a lot of these guys have more defensive first teams than Draymond been in the league.
Jemiah.
That's true, but we also have to understand that a lot of that's political. You know, like how your boy Kyle Kuzma said that the voting for the NBA MVP is political. A lot of that, you know, first team all defense, second team all defense is political. Very rarely is it quantified through numbers or qualified through film assessment, things of that sort. And Draymond's a guy that the league likes to try to avoid if they can.
Draymond is a better help defender than a primary defender.
Absolutely. That's the best point you've made thus far, Skip Bayless.
So he's like a lane patroller.
Right.
He anticipates all-time great. I give you that. I got to be here before you get there. I got to help. I got to make it happen and stay connected on defense.
Right.
He's really good at that.
Right.
But that's not special.
Right. I mean, in fact,
I disagree with that. I think that is special. In the same way that in the NFL, you might have a ball-hawking safety. He might not be the best against the run, but he can anticipate post routes or, you know, crossing routes and jump the route, get the interception. Or he knows how to tackle someone to force a fumble, things of that sort. That would make that safety special. Now, Ed Reed was great at everything, but he was especially great at those type of things, and that's one of the things that made him special. So to say that Draymond is not special on defense, that's just silly. He is.
Olajuwon and David Robinson.
As a matter of fact, I just saw in the game that the Golden State Warriors played against the Knicks, maybe about a month or so ago, Draymond Green guarded Julius Randle one-on-one. And that was the first time that I saw anyone not be intimidated by that bull in a china shop who goes by the name of Julius Randle.
They're smack dab in each other's career. They got to guard each other.
Yep.
And that's what that had the really the big man back then. It had him and Ewing and Mo.
Nobody could guard Olajuwon. The way that Olajuwon embarrassed David Robinson, no one will ever forget in those 95 playoffs. No one. The way he embarrassed that dude. And forget about Shaq. He lit Shaq up too, but he put Shaq out of his misery quick. David Robinson, it was like a long torture.
Hey, Shaq. Imagine Draymond trying to guard Shaq in his prime. What do you think happened, Skip?
Another joke. Well, so Draymond.
Well, I'll say this. Dennis Rodman did a relatively good job on Shaq when Shaq was in his prime in the mid-90s. Now, is Draymond Dennis Rodman? No, not necessarily, but he utilizes a lot of the same tactics, especially as an undersized defender against centers.
Is 6'7"-ish,
Right.
and would you call him a great athlete? Because I don't see.
No, he's not a great athlete physically, but as far as his skill set and his stature, he's exemplary.
Athleticism. Do you?
No.
Okay, so
He's carved out a great niche for himself. He's done
Absolutely, that's another good point. That's one of the better points you've made thus far.
in his career, but he's delusional if he thinks he's a top 20 defender all time.
is he an imposing physical specimen to you at all? No. Is he a shot blocker? No.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm looking at this list. I'm trying to figure out who could he stop. Other than Dennis Rodman, who's not going to shoot the ball, who he going to take? Say, I got him one-on-one. I got it. You don't worry about him. All these other guys that I mentioned, Skip, could take somebody and say, okay.
Well, here's the thing. We already knew that there was something going on upstairs with Draymond when he claimed that he was a better overall player than Charles Barkley. So we knew that he was a bit off kilter when he said that shit. I would have loved to have seen that matchup, though, because Charles would have given it to Draymond. But the thing about Draymond is that Draymond would have given it to Charles also. He would have blocked some of his shots. He might have stripped him in the low box, but Charles would have given it to his ass. Charles Barkley was one of the most dominant players of the last 30 years. You know, people see him on TV now and think he's just a clown. But in his prime, wow.
You normally get, that's not happening today. Of all the players on this list, who is he guarding and said, you know what, Olajuwon, you're not getting them numbers.
Okay, on your list, Bruce Bowen.
Okay.
That'd be the one. Seriously, I didn't put him.
Right, but I mean, how relevant is that, though? When you're talking about Hakeem Olajuwon, nobody's going to stop him. Hakeem lit up Patrick Ewing, lit up David Robinson, lit up Dikembe. When you're talking about elite offensive players, nobody's going to stop them. You're not going to put anyone on those type of players and say, okay, lock him down. Gary Payton, go lock down Michael Jordan. Or Dennis Rodman, go lock down Larry Bird. Look at what Larry Bird did to Dennis Rodman in the 87 conference finals, the last 3 games. Had over 35 points in each and every game of those last 3 games. Just lit his ass up.
Bruce Brown and Tony Allen.
That's what I said. Yeah, you can take Tony Allen right out of the game because Tony doesn't even shoot it. So
But is he going to guard Duncan or Kevin Garnett?
No, he's not going to guard Duncan or Kevin Garnett, but really, who is? Who's going to guard those guys, Shannon Sharp? There's a reason why both of those players had a down 20-year career and finished with over 25,000 points scored and, won championships. They're great players. So if the barometer is, or if the metrics are, can Draymond Green shut down all-time great offensive players? Of course, the answer is no, because nobody can.
You gotta love the confidence, but I feel like he says it. I'm the best defender to ever play the game. Then, 100%. Oh yeah, I view it differently. Oh yeah, I'm the best. I stand by. Like he had to convince himself as he was saying it.
Well, that's part of it. Part of it is self-talk. Draymond understands that he's not a gifted athlete, so if he does not have an ethereal level of belief in himself, he won't even be in the league.
I play with my mind.
Totally
is the guy scoring in your mind or is he scoring in actuality?
I appreciate your words. I'll have to see how he feels about that.
They talking about this man like he can't do anything. Like, come on.
All right, we've got some.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. Once again, brother, self-talk is the only talk. The only thing that matters is what you tell yourself, not what other people tell you. And if you don't have positive self-talk, you will not be able to manifest positive thoughts into positive actions. And that's the problem, man. There's so many people out here, they're just hearers, they're not doers. And that's why they get so frustrated. They want to sit back and allow other people to motivate them. And then at the same time, they don't want to get up and actionize any of the things that they claim a person is motivating them with. That rhetoric. So what really is your point of listening to people? And then you want to put all of the responsibilities for your life on another person. So that's why I respect what Draymond Green is doing. He's motivating himself. It is what it is. Is he the greatest defensive player of all time? In my perspective, or in my opinion, the answer is no. But he has the right to assert that of himself, because part of that constant reinforcement is going to lead to him ending up in the Hall of Fame. So peace.